How we doing, everybody? Hope we're having fun. Happy Easter to us all. This is a very special module. Last week we did leadership, and I did leadership last week. I normally do leadership after the co-creational value one, but I really like doing the leadership one in person, so I swapped them. The co-creation of value used to be the very last module, and at some point in the last 10 years, I actually called the class co-creation of value. This was kind of where we ended up. And if you think about how all the other modules fit together, this is kind of an amalgamation of everything up to this point. I'm a big fan of this stuff, as you're going to see. I'm a big fan of the bottom-up world. And now, granted, if you notice, the book that this was written in 2004, this article was 2002, which became the book in 2004, and there's been other articles between 2000 and 2010. This was all happening in the strategy literature without the Web 2.0 application to it. If you notice in the 2000 article, and then in the 2004 book, which they mention, which is C.K. Prahalad, which is called Co-Creation of Value, they're not really talking about Web 2.0. They're just talking about crowd. So let me see if I can be helpful here. A lot of the questions are similar, so I'm going to be able to go through these a little bit faster than usual. What is the best way to develop the infrastructure needed to support, a multi-channel distribution network? All right, class, I'm going to apologize here. This is not my wheelhouse. Professor Ornstein is the supply chain professor, but a quick down and dirty answer is you need the IT infrastructure and you need the logistics infrastructure. Logistics being able to ship from point to point, either from warehouse to consumer or warehouse to store, but really good multi-channel distributors also go from store to consumer or store to store. They have a multi-point distribution network. And the only way you can get that multi-point distribution network going is if you have a really strong information technology infrastructure to be able to facilitate those transactions, know where product is in the channel. Is it in the store? Is it on a truck? Is it in a warehouse? Is it on its way? And how can we get it to a particular customer? We've seen in previous articles that Sears has a distribution network for online, they have a distribution network for the regular stores, and these two networks don't overlap. They're completely independent of each other. And from the customer standpoint, that doesn't work. Okay. When the article was published in 2000, did Amazon provide recommendations based on customers' previous purchases? Yes. Using some kind of algorithm? Yes. That predated more complex and high-tech algorithm mechanisms that we see in today's strategies? Yes. But the algorithm that Amazon had back then, continually evolved to the power that it is now. I bet you that a good percentage, a good chunk of the algorithm that Amazon has now, 50%, 60%, is what they had back then. Amazon started in 2005, The recommendations started coming in 1999, 2000, 2001. So it's a learning algorithm. All these things, Google search now is significantly better than it was in 2000, 2001, 2002. The algorithm learns, and the engineers who have the data can use the data to tweak the algorithm. And as I've said in previous classes, Google's algorithm changes about 150 times a year. Basically every other day or every third day. They tweak it a little bit. And they keep tweaking. And over the course of 10 years, if you're changing an algorithm 100 times, 120 times, 150 times a year, guess what? It gets better. The authors of this article explain that consumers did not like to provide personal information to online services. Correct. Do you know if this is still the case today? Well, it's still the case today that people complain about privacy. But people complain about it, but they don't really put their foot down and do anything to prevent it. We have a culture here in the U.S. that we complain about it, but we really don't do that much about it. And in addition, the privacy laws here in the U.S., there's a lot of questions about this in the next couple questions. They're really all written in favor of the businesses and not consumer protection. If we were to go to Europe and we go to the EU, there are significantly stronger privacy laws in the EU. Not here. Not here. Really, it's buyer beware here as of, and what's the other, caveat emptor, which is, trying to think of the other phrase. In other words, do you think that the perception that people don't like to give up their privacy online but reluctant to do the convenience? Yes, this is absolutely correct. People complain about privacy all they want, but they don't stop using Facebook. They don't stop using Google. They don't stop using the free services where you're the product. You get sold. Borders Bookstore was an unlucky choice, and granted, you have to remember this article was probably published in 2000. It was probably written in 98, 99 when Borders were still kind of strong before they imploded in 2001, 2002, 2003. So some of it was unlucky, some of it was timing, some of it was the economy also melted in 2001 with 9/11 and the Gulf War and all that. Next article, same set of authors. Well, at least one of Ramaswamy's the same author. He's also Ramaswamy was part of the 2004 book. But by 2010, unfortunately, Prahalad passed away. And he was really one of the big brains behind all this co-creation. I have a feeling. Co-creation avoids other critical disadvantages of traditional strategy formalization. Many. However, it still has its limitations. What are those? This is a spectacular question, and those with their pencils right now should start writing. The biggest one is speed, or time. Co-creation of value takes longer. Period. It's the same thing when we had the same conversation about Theory Y and Bottom Up. Co-creation, bottom up, Theory Y leadership takes longer. It's not good when there's a crisis. It's not good when you need speed or time is the essence. That's not the kind of thing. Co-creation of value also takes a learning period before you can start making those decisions. It takes more time. The other issue with co-creation of value is, okay, who's in charge? In a traditional top-down organization, the hierarchy's there. It's easy to see who's in charge. But co-creation of value, how much power, this is the challenging, how much power do you give the crowd versus how much power do you keep centralized within the firm? Where to draw that line, none of the articles talk about this. That's another major limitation. For the companies that use websites like My Starbucks Idea, do you think companies are getting the full breadth of issues that are trying to convey in these websites? Focus groups. Do you think that the feelings or thoughts get misinterpreted? Well, I really believe that My Starbucks Idea is better than not having anything. I do not believe that any focus group or any data collection in and of by itself gives you 100% truth. But think about it more in the, is there smoke? If there's smoke, there must be fire somewhere. And it will give you places to look. It'll give you a signal to maybe there's something we're not thinking about here, or and you might not exactly have it or how to fix it. It's not exactly transactional, but if you keep seeing the same theme coming up and up and up and up and up again and again and again in these online websites, either wikis or focus groups, so they didn't even know what to call them back then. They're really wikis. But online focus groups, whatever the heck you want to call them. And it's not that it has to be directly interpreted, but you have to see that there's a problem there, and then you have to send a team out to go investigate. Whatever the theme is, whatever the issue is, whatever's going on. It's not like, oh, the cups are too small, and then you immediately go out and buy new cups. No, that's too transactional. You would say, well, cups, I see a lot of complaints from the baristas or whoever that the cups are too small. let's get a team together and let's see if we can really hammer this target down. And then you would do some more in-depth research on an area where you see some smoke. Now that, what I just said there, some of the questions that follow here kind of have that same feeling. So 93,000 ideas came up in the Orange Initiative. 7,500 got implemented. Now, is that, it's a large number, but it's small compared to this. Do you think that that's demoralizing? Do you think, I think this is amazing, to be honest with you. And you have to remember that 7,500 is amazing. It's a very large percentage. If employees can't be happy that the company is this far involved, I mean, it's not 93,500 got implemented. It's 7,500. And in addition, it's 93,000, but of this 93,000, how many was there just a bunch of smoke around the same theme, but they were different ideas around the same thing? They were all complaining about the same thing. The employees had different ideas of how to fix it. The company eventually did fix it, maybe not exactly how the employees suggested that it would be fixed, but whatever they were complaining about here got fixed here. I don't think that could be a morale problem at all. Is co-creation more prevalent in some industries than others? I believe it is. Can you provide some examples of industries where co-creation is more? Certainly in industries that don't have a ton of competitive pressure, believe it or not, where time is not the essence. But I think a better answer to your question is co-creation happens more in tech because not only are these tech companies more interested in the crowd, not only did the tech leaders grow up in a Web 2.0 world, the tech companies tend to have digital products. And digital products can be changed and manipulated rather easily. Co-creation is harder to do in large-scale manufacturing, for instance. Even though my article next week will talk about an auto company, aircraft engines, it's a little harder to do with co-creation. Cars, large-scale manufacturing that takes 2 to 3 years of, engineering to just build and modify the plant to manufacture something, and then 6 months to source parts. That's harder to do with co-creation. But a digital product, much better, much easier. Is the intent of including this article to show how the thinking has come full circle? In 2000, the article said that customers can also be considered like employees. Now they're saying that employees can also be considered like customers. I like the question. I never thought about it this way, to be honest with you. I wanted to show that there was, historically, we started talking about this stuff in 1999, 1998, 99, 2000, 2004, pre-Web 2.0. And look, now we're full-blown in the Web 2.0, and it's still around. I think co-creation of value is a viable strategy for social media. You need a reason to do social media. Co-creation of value is a wonderful strategic reason to use social. Now, also part of this question, just to respond, I think that the authors evolved to be considered, not just customers, not just employees, because when in 2002, 2004, when it was more crowd, but the internal crowd, employees. And they weren't thinking about customers until after the Web 2.0 boom. So, the My Starbucks Idea platform is a great tool to interact with customers to address wants and needs. The article comes up with other examples. Is this platform becoming more widespread? There are many Web 2.0 bottom-up type wikis out there by companies. Could Seton Hall use this type of platform to do focus groups that eventually a few students could be more productive dialogue? It's possible. I'm the MBA director. This is my wheelhouse. We do focus groups, particularly at the MBA exit interviews when you're in your final course. We do an electronic component of it as well. Do we have an ongoing thing? No, we don't have an ongoing thing. Is it possible? Yes, it's possible. We need some man hours, we need some more time, we need a little more resources, but it's not impossible. Love this next article. Know what your customers want before they do. This is very much in my spirit of marketing. My definition of marketing is find out what people want and give it to them. That's my definition of marketing. That has nothing to do with technology. That has nothing to do with the Web 2.0. But this co-creation of value, this philosophy of using data, yeah, this is very much in my wheelhouse. Love this article. Great fit for this week. For a new company, how do you truly know who your customers will be? Ooh, challenging. But it depends. Are you a new company that's entering an industry that already has established customers? And then you could go out and use social media listening software and listen to what customers are talking about your competitors? That would be really easy to do. You know, if not, very few new companies start without a revenue stream. You got to have some customers in order to sell. And you just pay a lot of attention to those very small set of customers. Is there such a thing as the next best offer reaching out too early? It could be intrusive, but the way it's happening now is it just being a recommendation. Sorry about that. That's gonna get picked up in a second. I don't think there is, really. If it's just a recommendation on a page or a recommendation after you purchase something, then I don't think that's that big of a deal. We're so accustomed to it now that it's not that big of a deal. Do you think that next best offer play a factor in the overload of content that consumers receive, which in turn causes them to overlook a majority of them? It could, especially now that algorithms are very good at picking things. In addition, they have information with us. But if we take this question, look at this question again, and go back to our discussions about CRM. Remember, bad CRM firms that were just using it as technology and not as a relationship building tool, they ended up using the software and the CRM database to spam their consumers, their customers. And that turned everybody off. Well, NBO could be that same philosophical kind of thing. You have to have the right mindset as a company. More co-creation and less just spamming. Less one-way, more two-way. Do you think NBO's next best offer are best pushed using social or traditional marketing channels such as print and marketing banner ads? I think they're best when you're in the moment. When you're on a search engine and you're looking for a particular thing, a next best offer scenario is good. If you're already in Target's website, if you're already in Walgreens' website, if you're already in Amazon's website, and then you get a next best offer, then it makes sense. If you're just finished a movie in Netflix and they give us 3 recommendations on movies that are very much like Sherlock, well then that's a great next best offer. But having that next best offer coming across through social or traditional when you're not expecting it is probably not going to be as effective. I understand customers volunteering information like web searches and checking in online. However, is there a way for them to conceal this information? It depends on the privacy settings of particular type of platforms, but there is a way for you to conceal more. For instance, stop using Google. Use DuckDuckGo. DuckDuckGo does not do anything with your information at all. Granted, the searches are not good as Google, but it's still a search engine and you still can protect your privacy a little bit more. I think Safari, which is down here, has they have settings. I know Mozilla and Firefox does, where you can do, what do they call it? Private browsing? Something along those lines, where nothing gets saved in history and nothing goes out. Are there examples where this has been called into question of privacy laws? It's been called into question, but very few things have happened because the privacy laws here in the U.S. are not that strong. If you guys, I have to find it. Let me hit pause for 1 second. All right, class, we're back. I just went into my Netflix queue. Yes, I have kids, and there's a lot of interesting movies here for kids. But when I'm on the treadmill and I'm looking for good stuff to watch, here's a great soccer movie. But this terms and conditions may apply. Every question you guys keep asking me about, this is a spectacular movie about how since 9/11, how the privacy laws kept changing in favor of the corporations. How Google and Facebook pretty much on a 12-month cycle, year after year, would change their terms of service, which basically lets them do what they want to do. Very good. This is very, very good too. Generation Like on Frontline, very, very, very good. Do I have anything else here real quick? Love Steve Jobs interview. Real good. I thought I had one more digital one. Actually, I didn't watch this one yet. I think those were the two that I had. Alright. Let me go back to questions. Don't want to waste too much of your time. Are next best offers more effective as online sales tools or as in-person brick-and-mortar tactics? Are there any data that compares these effectiveness? You know, that is a spectacular question. And to be honest with you, I don't remember seeing a study that compares NBOs versus in-person versus in-store. That would be a wonderful study. I got to figure out how we would do that. But off the top of my head, you know, I can't think of a study that actually explores the difference between NBOs versus in-person brick and mortar. Be a great study, though. Would that not be an awesome article for me to include in the next set if I can find one? Are there any companies that currently exist that facilitate the compilation of consumer analytics for companies? Or is all this information described in this article collected mainly in-house? Oh, there's tons of companies out there. Hold on one second. I'm going to hit pause again. Alright, we're back. Again, this is my blog. If you go into my blog and you type AXIOM, Axiom. Oh, Christmas. I spelled it wrong. AXIOM. Oh, this is embarrassing. AXIOM. Google, tell me how to spell it. This is the company, ACXIOM. ACX. ACXIOM. I have a number of privacy posts that I've done over the years about Axiom. You know, they are one of the most, it's the largest data brokers in the business. There's a PBS documentary here. Here's an article from The Atlantic. This is really hysterical. You know, in the name of transparency, where Axiom wanted you to go into their database at this website and for you to clean up your own records so they could then go sell them at a premium. Really nuts. Really nuts. Axiom's very scary. They buy over 1 billion pieces of data a day. The article mentions that legal and regulatory issues are evolving quickly as the collection and use of customer data has become increasingly sophisticated. Has the U.S. government taken any steps to protect consumer data and privacy? Very, 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 very few. Very few. Little to none. Would that censorship hurt consumers and companies? I don't think so. Because what I want is, I would prefer that companies, you have to opt in and you have to agree to the relationship with a company that you would want to have a CRM relationship with. You know, CVS is a company that I would opt in with. Target is a company that I would opt in with. I don't have a problem having a relationship with those companies because those are companies that I currently do business with. But it's the companies that I don't do business with, like Axiom, are the ones that piss me off. Next article, using the crowd as an innovation partner. This is a little awkwardly worded. Hold on one second. I have to sneeze. Okay, went away. In sports, do the crowds dictate an innovation partner in regards to the community efforts? Sports is different. The players on the field do not go to the crowd to ask them how they should play. It's a little different. The crowd is more passive than active with regards to they cheer after the fact or they cheer to root them on. But really the teams, could the fans protest enough to ownership to make changes? Well, we do have situations in soccer teams around the world, football, whatever you want to call them, where the fans actually own the team and they get to vote and fire managers and general managers and stuff like that. That's kind of interesting. But that's as close as we get here. A couple Premier League teams are like that. They're like stock companies. And you could be an owner of the team. Is it possible that crowdsourcing can give a company too much information, causing it to be too segmented? It's possible that you can have too much information that you don't interpret well or you don't sort well. I don't think you can have too much information, though. It's just too easy to manage data these days. But it's also too easy to misinterpret the data. I don't think you can be too segmented. I'd rather have segments of one. I'd rather have 65 million customers with 65 million segments. Why crowds are a trending solution. Do you see algorithms replacing human as a cheaper form of outsourcing? No. Because algorithm is nothing unless we have humans giving the algorithm the data for the algorithm to crunch. These two things are symbiotic. I don't see them one replacing the other. You need human. Now, granted, are there jobs out there that an algorithm could replace? Sure, there's some, but I can't see the quants completely taking over. I mean, even in Wall Street, there's a good segment of quant going out there, but you don't see quants completely replacing all the traders. I don't see that happening. Do you know if a crowd participants include employees from competitors? Sure, why wouldn't they? I would expect it almost. You could work for Ford and your husband drive a Chevy, and then the Chevy husband and your Chevy family, guess what? You might participate in surveys for Chevrolet. As a crowd participant is becoming more prevalent, our companies implement policies that prohibit employees from engaging with competitors. There are non-disclosure things. They do exist. I've seen them. And there are companies that are very particular. Apple's like this. Really, really strict about stuff like that. Are individuals recruited to be part of crowd labor markets considered temporary employees? If so, how are they typically compensated? Well, if we look at Amazon and Mechanical Turk, Amazon's Mechanical Turk, it's usually a one-off job. And you get paid a flat fee for that job. I mean, I've used Mechanical Turk for marketing research. But if you get a chance, go into Google Mechanical Turk and take a peek in there, and you'll see all kinds of stuff. You could make some extra money. Not a lot, but you can make something. Are focus groups considered a form of crowdsourcing? Yes, they are. But focus groups traditionally tend to be small, 16, 18, 20 people. Crowdsourcing tends to have the law of large numbers. While the article describes the four main approaches to crowdsourcing, I was wondering which form is most commonly used by business today. Well, if we go to page 64, we talk about contests, collaborative communities, complementers, and labor markets. Collaborative communities, I think, is the most common today. Contexts are also very common, but they tend to be used more from a PR or a promo standpoint. But collaborative communities are, Harley Davidson has a collaborative community. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. What is the real difference between a spot labor markets and outsourcing? The article didn't fully describe how they vary. I don't know if we want to split the hairs here, but spot labor tends to be one-offs. Outsourcing might be contract and more longer term. If I was going to interpret it, that's what I would say. Spot labor markets, this is Amazon Turk. Outsourcing, outsourcing, you could outsource, but that person shows up to your office. I have one of my former students that's been working up at Converse for the last 18 months, and he's not an employee of Converse, but he goes to Converse every day. Community problem solving. Could Google's method of attaining other companies to build their technologies be considered a form of co-creation? I don't know. I think we're stretching it right there. I mean, Google bought Waze. Waze is helping. There's co-creation involved with the data input and when accidents show up. But Google bought them. And actually even Maps, Google Maps was a company that they bought way back when. So is that co-creation? I don't know. It's more, to me, it sounds more like acquisition. When companies like BD develop, test, and ultimately use information obtained from many different contributors who are assessing the problem, does BD have the rights to the information they obtain from these contributors? Yes. First of all, the people gave the information up voluntarily. It wasn't part of a contract. It wasn't part of payment. It wasn't part of an employee. And more than anything else, the results that come out of it are probably an amalgamation of 5 or 6 other different comments. It's not just one comment and then they're going to implement that one comment. It can easily be traced back to one individual who made the comment. And the information does come proprietary to the company who's collecting the data. Now, could the wiki or some of the other things have some kind of legalese in the beginning of the website? They might, but I've never heard any issues, challenges, or complications here off the top of my head. It's amazing that the co-creation team at BD was able to accomplish such in-depth experiments in addition to their day jobs as divisional managers. Is this a realistic approach for most companies? Are there any companies hiring people dedicated to co-creation strategy? Look, as high as I am on co-creation, as much as I'm a big fan of co-creation, I'm introducing this to you guys because I want you to think differently. Co-creation is not the mainstream. Co-creation is not 25% of the firms out there. I don't even know what the number is. It might be double digit, but it's probably a very low double digit number. 10, 15% of firms that are out there. And it's only that high because of California tech companies around the world. So, by definition, there are companies hiring co-creation people. They are hiring community managers. They are hiring that, but it's not as strategic as I would like it to be. All right, class. I love doing this. I just spent 4 articles telling you the virtues of co-creation of value. And I love finding an article that shreds it, that gives you the opposite or the challenges or the problems. And this is a new article. This is the first time I've used it. I love these guys. Cass Sunstein. And if you look at the first page on 92, there is all these books that I'm staring at on my bookshelf. Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow. Got it. Dan Ariely's Predictably Irrational. Got it. Nudge. Got it. These are all books that I have sitting right here. Or right here or right there. Very, very, very good books. By very, very smart people. So basically, co-creation of value in theory is beautiful. But it's not easy to do. There are challenges related to it. This is the best co-creation of value book out there. And there are assumptions to make the law of large numbers work. And these assumptions, we're going to hit some of them here. So let me just keep going here. What are the deliberation group, and why can they correct or reduce certain biases? Well, we've talked about group and the power of the crowd. But sometimes the crowd can be dumb and the crowd make mistakes, or there could be cascade issues. We're going to get to that. So basically, this is the Devil's Advocate group. This is the scout team. These are the people that whatever bubbles up from the crowd, they debate it. So it's not just completely bottom up. You know, we still have an element of the top down fighting against the bottom up to come up with the best possible answer. Is there always better for leaders of a group not to give their opinions first? I'm actually a fan of never giving my opinion first. I'd rather listen to everyone and then chime in, to be honest with you. I mean, I still have my opinion. Hopefully my opinion won't be swayed too much by what I hear from the group. But I don't like giving my opinion first. I'm not a fan of that. But then again, I'm a theory why guy. What is the best method to create an environment where opinions are not based and seek approval? Or opinions are not biased? It's probably biased. No, that are not based on seeking approval. You know, really, one of the main assumptions in this book, and it comes up in multiple questions here, is when you give an opinion, your opinion has to be anonymous. It has to be anonymous, and at the same time, you need to, another assumption is you cannot be influenced by other people's opinions either. So the best wisdom of crowd situation is when you input an answer without it being anonymous and without you seeing anyone else's opinions. And that's when wisdom of crowds and groups are smart, not dumb. There would have to be many conflicts when we discuss one thing. Everyone has good ideas. It's hard for consensus. How do you think decision groups is a good idea? Well, when you have a focus group and you have 16 people in the room, you always have 2 or 3 people dominating the conversation. That's not optimal, and a good moderator has to correct for that. But in a true wisdom of crowds scenarios, you have 300,000 people making, as part of the input, but they should be anonymous. And they should give their input without seeing anyone else's input. There shouldn't be a leaderboard. There shouldn't be threads of conversation. And then you have, someone just giving their opinion, and you have the ability for the group to come up with ideas and not be influenced by other group members. That's not the same. That's true wisdom of crowds. The advantage of a group is that there are too many who contribute to the process of deliberation, and each can bring its own share of goodness and moral prudence. Some appreciate one part, some another altogether, but however, it has its own problems. What are they? Time. This takes too long. It takes too long. It takes really long, and it takes a lot of manpower. And even when you have good input from the group, management still has to make the final decision. Someone's got to make the final call. And where is the power? Do you give the power to the group, or do you give the power to the manager? Are we going to go all completely X here, or are we going to go all completely Y here? That is the challenge with this stuff. And there isn't a whole lot of articles out there that talk about that. I mean, you've read 15 of them so far in the last 2-3 weeks between Leadership This and other articles, and there hasn't one that said anything about that yet. There are kinds of cascades that correspond to the main sources of group error. Well, it's groupthink, really. That's the main one. Everybody wants to give their opinion. They see what the largest opinion trending is. They see what the number one problem is, and they jump on the bandwagon. And then the issue with group polarization is you have one group argue for something, someone else starts arguing for something else, and then people just argue for these two particular things, and they lose the forest from the trees. They're just arguing for their own group position as opposed to really finding the best possible solution, but cognitively they get locked into either choice A or choice B. It's a problem. The article talks about women and men who self-censor in particular circumstances. It can happen. This is even the case when a specific gender is acknowledgeable in the area being discussed. Yes, it can happen. For example, using the article's example, if a male is very knowledgeable in fashion, would he or she tend to self-censor? If you didn't violate the assumption of anonymity, then we don't have a problem with self-censor. But many of these wisdom of crowds scenarios, you are identified by position, by title, by division, by group. And, sometimes you don't want to stick your neck out there. You'd rather be anonymous. The article states in both business and government there is often a clear sense that a certain point of view is the proper one, and that those who question or reject it, even for purposes of discussion, do so at their own peril. True. Who determines what is proper in this context? Well, this right here, do so at their own peril, okay? This is a cultural thing at the firm. This is probably more of a Theory X kind of a firm. I mean, if you have more of a Theory X kind of a firm and you try to implement a wisdom of crowds type strategy there, you don't have the leadership to believe in that. Kind of wasting your time. You need to be in an environment where you're okay to volunteer information. Washington and government is probably some of the most top-down of all top-down that you can get to. You can't get more X than Washington, really. So it's hard to have wisdom of crowds in Washington. It's not an easy thing to do. I'll lead that to our next article. But it's a culture thing. You got to be careful. If you're in an X environment, they're not going to listen to you about this wisdom of crowds stuff. They're not. Under the correct group decision model, would this not be individual voices that lead to a decision along with dominant voice who guides that decision making? Yeah, that's kind of what we've been arguing here. You have individual voices, and then you have a leader that agrees and pushes an agenda forward. That kind of thing. Dr. Dano, as a professor with many years of teaching experience, in your opinion, which of the factors outlined in this article cause difficulty during group projects in academic arena? That's easy. Group projects, when you have one person on the team who is a complete X, that doesn't share, that things have to be done his or her way, and, they judge. It's not a team effort. That is the key. I've seen it a million times. Can groups and group decision making occur without a leader? No. There needs to be someone to make the final decision. There needs to be a community manager who guides the discussion, that organizes things. Even if the community makes the community votes to make the final decision, there's still someone organizing the community. There's still a leader somewhere. I don't think this is possible without a leader at some point. To avoid cascade effects and polarizations, would companies be better off conducting studies through anonymous surveys or through the Delphi method? Delphi method is one way. There was, in the back of the article, there are some very, very good ways to avoid. Delphi is one. We don't have the time to go through it right now. But anonymity, I've said it 3 or 4 times already, is probably one of the best. Finally, your curveball article, we have President Obama and the Machinery of Hope. This was published in 2008, right in the middle when I was calling this class the Co-Creation of Value class. This was before he was elected president and right after he won the Democratic nomination to be the candidate for the Democratic Party. I read this article in Rolling Stone and I was just floored because so much of it is what we've been talking about, and they don't use the co-creation of value term, but I wanted to give the class an example in real life how this happens. And this is just a wonderful thing. What are the disadvantages of a bottom-up campaign? The disadvantages is, you're giving up control. This never happened in politics before, to the best of my knowledge. I'm not a politics guy. But I think the example was the Texas chapter on the MyBo, organized through the MyBo site. They gave them a few broad platform things, and it was up to them to decide how they were, there was no campaign office there run by Obama's team telling people what to do. They had a boot camp. They told people this is what we're about. You guys go do what you need to do about those particular themes. There's much more. This is more time. This is more effort. This takes longer to set up. But at the same time, it ends up being stronger if the community gels. Can a bottom-up political campaign be affected by false accounts as easily as product campaigns? I don't see why it couldn't. Once again, you're giving up power, and this is the crowd. If the crowd has a certain say or sway, and they start saying something that's not correct, well, guess what? You have to monitor it, but they can easily pump out false information. Do you think Obama has set the standard for presidential elections? There is no question that Obama changed the presidential elections. But as you noticed in the article, this was 2008. It was the 2004 election with Howard Dean before he melted, literally. Obama's electronic people were Howard Dean's electronic people that eventually became that Blue Steel organization in Cambridge, Massachusetts. So Obama changed campaigning. There's no question whatsoever. Even if a bottom-up approach has not worked yet in the White House, the reason why it hasn't worked in the White House is he can do that on the campaign, but when you go to Washington, you can't. It's not a bottom-up world in Washington. You have top-down, 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 everything. You have a president, you have a House, you have a House of Representatives, you have the Senate. It's all top-down. And you have lobbyists. Ooh, don't like them people. Do you think a bottom-up approach is able to work in this type of setting? No. Not currently, no. That's why a lot of people like candidate Obama better than they like President Obama, because candidate Obama can be bottom-up, inspirational, and he doesn't have to worry about being in a top-down world. What has made the Obama campaign different and successful? I think we already covered that. How similar or how different was that compared to the Clinton campaign? And when we talk about Hillary Clinton's campaign, she tried to run a traditional top-down campaign, and the bottom-up campaign got out ahead of her. They were organizing in offices, and they were going to various state elections before the top-down campaign had a chance to even set up. The crowd that was organized through the Web 2.0 MyBo website was faster in this regard. The article states, the unique structure of the Obama campaign blunts the PR fallout of such off-messaging moments because it offers plausible deniability. Given that Obama was the leader of the campaign, how can he not be held responsible for what those in his campaign are doing? Hey, look, in politics, even if it's a PR manager or your campaign manager that you hired and he or she goes off the record or off the rails, that still gives the candidate plausible deniability. And this is someone that the candidate is directly employing. When you have a crowd out there and they're not being paid and they're running their own campaign in the spirit of Obama, there's tons of plausible deniability there. I don't see that being a problem at all. I mean, how can you get mad at Giants fans who go out there and celebrate and do crazy things when they're just fans being fans of supporting the team? You may not agree with what they're doing, but they're supporting the team. But if they do something that's incorrect or something criminal or something like that, you could say, look, they're just fans of the team. We didn't tell them what to do. It's great plausible deniability. One can argue that Obama campaign was top-down given that Obama set the tone with his beliefs and campaign. That got all the group stakeholders involved. No, that's not top-down. He had a mission statement, but he didn't tell people what to do. how they envisioned or how they believed or what they did about that vision statement was up to the crowd. I don't know if it's top. It's co-creation where you have a little bit of this, a little bit of this, and kind of not top down. Not top down. Co-creation. Do you see the top-down approach waning in the present and future political campaigns for the bottom-up approach? Do you think this is a temporary trend? Do I think it's a temporary trend? Look, the Republicans struggled in 2004 with this, even though they eventually won. They certainly struggled in 2008 with this, and they lost. They radically struggled in 2012 with this. The Republicans are more X than Y. And the Democrats, although a lot of them are X, Obama happens to be more Y. It was easier for him to do something like this because of his mindset. Most politicians are not willing to do this. And the biggest question is, if Hillary is going to run, what is she going to do? Because she's been an X, and she's been top down, and she's continually been top down. So I'm curious to see if she follows Obama's template or not, let alone anyone else. Absent the technology social media aspect, besides the technology and social media aspect, which Obama campaign do you know of another political campaign, President Obama, used the grassroots or bottom-up approach to extend it? Well, no one's did it on the scale that Obama has. There's been I don't follow politics nearly as much. I'm sure there's been other grassroots types campaigns on the smaller local level, on the House of Representative level, but no one's ever done it to the scale of what Obama did in both 2008 and 2012. And as a matter of fact, I think his 2012 was less co-creation of value than the 2008 was. Do you agree with this article that campaigns depend on big donors and insiders will never work again? Campaigns always involve big donors and big-time insiders. They always will. And it's one of the things I don't like about the politics, because once Obama got the Democratic nomination, all the big donors and the insiders came rolling his way. And he used all that money to do traditional top-down TV advertising in a major, major way. But he still had the crowd helping organize. It wasn't complete top-down like most other campaigns. But he did shift to more top-down than what he started with. Is social media leading to a more political savvy population, just like it has led to more savvy consumers? I can't answer this question. I really can't. Again, it's politics. I don't like politics. I'm not a fan of politics. And if anything, this is a wonderful question to go back to this article. Because what we do have is group polarization. And social media has made it easier for red and blue to polarize into their red and blue groups. And I don't think it's been helpful for anyone, to be honest with you. It needs to be more anonymity. Class, thank you. Very good set of questions. Hopefully I gave you a good set of answers. I look forward to our next module.